Great. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining from wherever you are joining. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for you. Welcome to the May edition of our online English meetup group. Today, we are excited to bring you a customer story from city and county of Denver. We are going to do a deep dive in their MuleSoft journey. But before we get started, I just want to go over the agenda for today and quickly give you a couple of updates, and then we can hand over to our speakers today. Organizers. I'm your host today. I'm co-hosting with Manik, who hosts the events with me in Amer region. I work as a customer success architect in our customer success strategy and architecture group at MuleSoft. Manio is an architect from Avio, and Angel and Royston are handling our EMEA and JPAC regions for their meetups. For our agenda today, we're going to do a quick help you quickly understand the guidelines for today's meetups on how to post questions. We're going to give you a quick community update on what's coming new and what new features are available in the platform. And then we are going to start talking about city and county of Denver's MuleSoft journey. And then we are going to end the meetup today with a Q&A. So we're hoping to wrap up the event within an hour, but if we go over a few minutes, we're going to, of course, share this recording on our YouTube channel. So if you miss anything, feel free to go back and check out the recording. So just some guidelines today. If you have any questions when the speakers are talking about the content, feel free to ask the questions in the chat. There is a Q&A tab if you have already looked in the Webby platform that you can ask your questions in. If there are questions are going to be answered in the later part of the sections, we will ask your questions at the end if they're unanswered. The recording of this meetup will be posted on our VirtualMuleys channel on YouTube. So do check it out if you miss any part of the meetup today. And at the end of the meetup, we are going to send you a feedback survey. Please send us your feedback and also let us know what kind of topics you are expecting for the next meetups so we can find you the right speakers for our future events. Just a quick, if anybody is new to this meetup group and joining for the first time, you can also subscribe to the meetup events. The online global group is where you would need to sign up for. And we have over 150 meetup groups. We have all regional groups across different cities all over the world. If you have a meetup group for your city, please do sign up and RSVP for the events there. If you want to know more about the upcoming events, there is a events page where all the upcoming events are posted. You can find all the details there. Just another update, we have recently launched MuleSoft customer newsletters. So if this is something that you're not aware of, there is a way that you can, anyone that is having MuleSoft subscription can opt into this customer newsletter now. So you will get all the personalized updates on what are the new product features we are introducing, what are the trainings that are coming, the webinars, and you have a way to select which are the updates that you would like to know more about, right? So if you are on the help center, that's where you would be able to sign up for these newsletters. And this is the link that I'm going to share in the chat, which you can click on and opt in for the newsletter. So you will get all the newsletters in your inbox in the future. Okay, so that's all the updates I had. Now let's talk about our speakers today. We have Robert and Nate from City and County of Denver. I'm going to quickly hand over to Robert and Nate to quickly introduce themselves, and then Robert, you can take over the screen sharing and start our session today.
Sure,
Robert, you
sure,
first.
sounds good. Yep, absolutely. So Robert Bruns, I'm the director of application development. So what that means is I kind of oversee most of our enterprise applications from a development side. So things like Acela, GIS, Salesforce, Identity, Workday, Open Cities for our content, and then of course MuleSoft. So one of the big things that I'm focused on, and I think it's you'll see it in some of the future slides. We're really focused on having an accurate inventory, making sure that we address our technical debt, and we're really trying to shift to more of our enterprise platforms than anything like point-to-point integrations or just legacy things that we can't keep up to date, especially with all the new security requirements that are coming down the pipeline. We're really focused on CI/CD pipelines. We really want to have error-free delivery through our SDLC, And we want to have KPIs throughout the whole process. And of course, one of the things that I say often with MuleSoft as our middleware tier, we're really looking at it as a way to kind of future-proof our integration layer. So we'll go into a lot more details, but I'll hand it over to Nate to introduce himself.
Yeah, so my name's Nate Kress. I manage the integration development team at the city and county in Denver. So within my team is MuleSoft, Salesforce, Workday, and identity developers. But yeah, one of our primary platforms we develop on obviously is MuleSoft, and right now we're in the middle of a migration from Oracle over to Mule. So um, we'll dive more into that later in the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Nate and Robert. Robert, I'm going to stop my sharing. You can take over the screen sharing.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Okay, we can see your screen.
All right, perfect. Let me just see that. All right, so kind of going through, we're going to go through a couple areas. What was our selection process, our implementation, our architecture, some of the challenges, and then we'll kind of get out of the presentation mode and into more of the visualization, so you can actually see some of the things that we've built on the platform. What are some of the KPIs that we use? What does our store look like? What does our reuse look like? What do our pipelines look like? And of course, please ask questions. This is something that Nate and I like to do, so ask questions as many as you want. We're going to try to get through the slides relatively quickly. Again, because I like to think you want to see more of the show and tell, and you can just drill us on any topic you want, from the strategy to the governance to the technical side. So you already saw us. That's just bigger versions of us. So let's talk about the selection process. So when we looked at our selection, let's talk about why. Why did we want to go with a different platform off of our Oracle SOA? Why did we want to move off of our current platform? One, it was heavily customized, very little documentation. One of the big things, and this was a big pain point, is our upgrades were measured in years, not months, but literally years. The last upgrade that we did took us years to do. Our customers didn't have any visibility into the data. So if there was an issue with the Oracle bus, it required a ticket and lots of data mining to figure out what was going wrong. And we had almost no reuse. So in kind of looking at what was going to be our criteria to move forward, we really wanted to bucket it into 5 main areas: infrastructure, developer tools, enterprise integration capabilities, governance, and security. And some of our main considerations when we looked at the variety of vendors was we really wanted it to be out of the box. As I mentioned before, it had to have CI/CD pipelines. We needed to have good support. We had to have ability to do automation testing. We're currently using Catalan. Self-documenting APIs is a huge area, because our documentation, when you think about like bringing someone new on, the learning curve was huge because we just didn't have things very well documented. We needed to have dashboards that we could share with our customers, both that we used internally for ourselves, and being able to share them with, for example, like our safety agency, so they could see what was going on. In our case, we needed a hybrid model. We have some very critical transaction types, so we needed to be able to have things that were on-prem as well as the cloud. And of course, one of the big ones for me was our ability to reuse, because it was pretty much zero before. So looking at our implementation, again, some of the things kind of build on the last slide. So obviously we went with an on-prem first, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in some of the challenges and why we ultimately went that way. But again, your standard SDLC, dev test, QA, and prod, setting up our CI/CD pipelines, having common libraries for code use, documentation, having our network approach, and of course, automated testing. One of the things that kind of stepped outside of the technology and more into the process that we didn't really expect were some gains around data reviews. So we realized as we started implementing, we really didn't have a good process to understand data classification. So we basically set up a whole process within ServiceNow so that we could accurately identify what types of data And obviously this led to, just more standardization and knowing how to do different things depending on the different data classification standards. Standard API policies, automated client requirements and build, code reviews, and then just our approvals on deployment. So next slide, we'll go into some cloud architecture. So Nate, I will hand it over to you to talk about this one.
Yeah, so initially we did not go down the best practice approach with cloud architecture, but eventually we did base our architecture around what Mule recommends as far as the architecture. And this is for a hybrid environment. So we have our internal network to the right, and that's your standard Mule runtimes on virtual servers. We have a load balancer in front of those, and we're using Hazelcast as well for redundancy. When we stood up the cloud architecture, we have our public APIs and our private APIs, and those each require a separate load balancer. But by using those load balancers, we're able to segment these APIs into different areas within the cloud network. And that way, this is easier to govern for us. We know if we deploy anything to our public APIs that those are exposed to the internet, and those require policies, which in the middle there, you can kind of see some of the policies we're leveraging that don't take any code, but we can apply those out on the cloud, and that saves development time quite a bit. If we deploy something internally and need to expose that out to the public, we have to expose that through firewalls and our load balancer. So really for speed of deployment, we're looking at the cloud now for any sort of public API. And we have the public internet calling those, so everything is all set up in a standard way. The private APIs gives us an extra layer of security, since those can't be called from any sort of external source. And that's all configured through our VPN configuration within Mule and in the security area on any point. It did take a little bit of time for our network resources to ramp up, but there's really good documentation out there, and they've got everything configured with certificates and the right amount of security. At the end of the implementation, we had our security group run some penetration tests against it, and that gave our security team the confidence that this is a secure solution. We can probably go to the next slide. Robert, I don't know if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I can take the next view. So again, this is something that we kind of worked back with MuleSoft. I think that's been one of the great things of kind of having them as a partner. Is we've had a lot of sessions with them to really help us build out what does our roadmap look like, and where are we on our journey. So this was one of the more recent ones we did. And I thought it was a good visualization on where we are as far as where we were with the foundation. We're trying to scale, and ultimately where we're trying to get to from an optimization level. So there was a lot more behind this, but I thought this was just kind of a good one just to kind of show that where we started and where we're trying to get to. So one of the big things when we looked at was trying to align this to our strategic plan. So at a high level, for our strategic plan, we have 4 pillars: reliability, innovation, access, and partnership. I think they're fairly self-explanatory, but one of the things that we really try to do when we kind of move forward with an enterprise system is try to blend that into our strategic plan against these pillars. So when we look at kind of MuleSoft against that, from a reliability perspective, we really wanted to have fast incident resolution and metrics dashboards. From innovation, again, the advanced queuing, rapid API deployment. From an access perspective, and this was really a new one for us, vendor API access and partner developer client access. And then from a partnership perspective, documentation and integration patterns. But what does that look like from more of the large scale perspective? And again, this was another envisioning session that we did with MuleSoft, where they partnered with us to really look at what is our roadmap to implement this, and kind of broken into three main categories: implementation, center of enablement, and an infrastructure. And this kind of shows at a high level, where we started and where we're trying to get to on our journey. I mean, the center of enablement, I will say, this was kind of a new area, and one that we still need to um, make some improvements. But for example, when we talk to a lot of our agencies and just show them the power of MuleSoft, and when we talked about some of their challenges, well, I'm entering the same data in 5 different systems. And like, well, you don't have to. We can take care of that for you. And it was just such a new concept that they really couldn't even get their minds around it. So that's something we need to spend a little bit more time with, really break it down into something simpler, because you don't know what you don't know. It's like going from a wheelbarrow to a Ferrari. The gap was so big in their understanding. So again, these are things that we really want to work on and really get everybody across our 50 plus agencies engaged, because there's just such an opportunity to do things better and just have a higher quality in data transmission. So all that being said, it all sounds great, but what were some of the challenges that we faced? And this one, Nate kind of hit on it a little bit, but I'd say the first one, and when you think about an implementation like this, make sure that you have upfront alignment with your security team, as far as just understanding where their mindsets are. Is it totally focused on just that overall kind of old school security piece of having everything on prem behind a firewall? I understand it, versus kind of the newer way with cloud deployments and just different layers of security. So this caused enormous delay, and it finally came to a point where we just conceded just to get this moving forward, where we did go on prem first, and much later we started moving over to the cloud. Of course, going on prem comes with some complications. So one of the first ones was queuing. We needed the ability to resend transactions if there was a failure. Of course, in the cloud, there's something already there. On prem, we had to get RabbitMQ. Um, Analysis of the existing SOA code. Again, some of these things were developed way before myself and Nate's time, so it took a little bit more time to unravel than we had initially thought. From a resource perspective, we ran into some testing bottlenecks, which is why ultimately I think was kind of eye-opening thing of getting Catalan to really help with some of the automation around testing. Um, the complexity of our test scenarios. This was something, especially when we look at some of our safety systems, as we transmit data from the police system to the sheriff system to the court system to the DA. Um, Again, very very complicated. It's taken a little bit more time to just do some testing. So really, when you think about this, really whatever time you think it's going to test, it's going to take longer, especially if you're on some of these legacy systems. One of the things that we did run into initially with the implementation with MuleSoft, and this was a little bit on the MuleSoft side, we got it corrected down the road, um, but the original architect that we had really was like, well, you could do it this way, you can do it that way, and it actually created more confusion. And what we're really looking for is just tell us the way to do it. We corrected it down the road. So I would just say, if you're thinking about doing implementation, make sure from an architecture standpoint, it's these are the best practices. Otherwise, you're just going to run into a lot of back and forth and a lot of concern from your security team. And then, as Nate kind of showed in the diagram, getting the AWS Direct Connect and VPN set up took a little bit longer than we had expected it to take. But now that's all up and running. Now we're able to deploy our APIs either on-prem or to the cloud, and really we're trying to get full use of our cores in the cloud. So Nate, I know you were going to kind of switch over to more of the visual pieces of showing some of our KPIs, life cycle, our reuse. Again, it's 32%. So I will stop sharing and I will hand it over to you.
Sure, and I guess one area to start on is criteria for deploying on-prem versus cloud. Just to highlight that, we look at on-prem for any sort of API that needs to talk directly to an on-prem resource like a database. The farther away you get from the system that you're integrating with, the more latency you're going to introduce. So if speed is required and things like that, we'll deploy it on-prem. But that doesn't mean all your APIs related to your integration need to be deployed on-prem. And that's kind of the nice thing about splitting these APIs up into experience, process, and system APIs. You can deploy those process APIs up to the cloud that interact with your system API, and then transfer that processing load to the cloud, and then you'd be able to adjust workers and scale that API appropriately. We're starting to see some of our on-prem servers are starting to buckle under the load we're putting on it. So right now we're trying to identify, okay, what are the usage around these APIs that's causing the most CPU and memory usage, and then formulating a strategy to get those up to the cloud. But I'll get more into that around our monitoring. But let me go ahead and share some of our metrics, and this will be kind of a 10,000 foot view um, of our implementation here. So are you able to see the metrics?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So we just did a review of our implementation with Mule. We gathered some of these high level metrics just to understand where we're at. Long term, we're going to put this into Power BI. We had a Power BI version of this, but with the new metrics framework, we need to update that and automate this, and then we can get some trending data over time. But just to start from that very high level view, right now we have um, about 100 APIs deployed up to production and 375 in our lower tiers. That includes dev, test, and QA in our lower tiers, and that's all categorized under Sandbox. The original scope for Oracle is about 150, we believe. And so we have 2 large releases coming up into June where this will probably approach that 150 level of the number of APIs to support our safety operations. If we look at our exchange, we have 140 exchange entries. So this provides the documentation and the transparency around what these APIs do, and also leads to a more self-service model, which saves a ton of time for our team. We can point people to the exchange as opposed to having to explain to developers how to use an API. You can see here our cloud core usage is pretty low. We stood up that best practice architecture a couple months ago and validated it all. So right now we have a lot of capacity on the cloud, and that's where we're looking for opportunities to deploy up to the cloud and reduce our on-prem usage. Right now we have 30% reuse, and that's mainly due to our system APIs. So if we have a new API, we can look to see what out of our inventory do we already have with any system that we need to integrate with, and just add operations to that API. And it's estimated we've saved about 345K due to that reuse over time. So it does add up quite a bit, because it's very apparent when something already exists, which, as Rob mentioned in Oracle, that was not always apparent. You can see we have about 70 active users, 50 to 70 active users in the last few months. So we have a lot of usage on the platform. And let me dive into the Exchange portion here. So Exchange is where we document all our APIs. Here is an example of the documentation that we maintain as part of our SDLC. So we have a high-level description, as well as a high-level data flow. And then the rest is really just endpoints and everything else that's auto documented by Mule. I find if you document too much in here and get too creative with your documentation, that will become out of date very quickly. So really a nice visual is what developers need, as well as the endpoints. And then you can dive into the operations here and get examples of what do the payloads look like. At the end of the day, that's what developers want, and they want to be able to request access to the API, which is all supported through our exchange. So this has been really great as far as being able to document what we have, get our vendors integrated or our various developers from other development groups into the system, and then using the APIs. When the developers are working on these APIs, we have everything fully automated on the build side. So our continuous integration pipelines are right here. You can see we have a lot of activity, a lot of check-ins, a lot of code reviews. So the speed of development here with this automation is, to be frank, just is amazing for our team. They can make a quick change and deploy it up to an environment within 5 to 10 minutes. So this has led to some very quick um, resolution on bugs, uh, patches to production, and a hot fix can happen very quickly. Um, and everything is code reviewed through our pull requests. This is all done with Git, and then we use a branching structure of having a development branch and a master branch, which is all reviewed by our developers and approved. So we have um, the whole SDLC really audited, and we can identify if there's any breakdown in the process. What do we need to do? Do we need to add more approvals, or what broke something? If something's not working. Next, we've done a lot of work around custom metrics and dashboards, and this really pulls in your support staff and gives them a window into your integrations that a lot of systems don't really have. So here's a great example around our contract processing integrations. So we have contracts from a system called Passport. This is where our city attorneys work in, and they approve contracts and sign contracts. And once those are approved, these are sent over to Mule to get dispositioned to other systems. So we have another system for which is called B2G. That's our economic development platform for business loans and things related to that. Alfresco is our enterprise document management system. So the documents end up there for storage and data retention. And then also the contract may end up in Workday, which is our financial system. But if there's an issue with any one of these systems, you can get a really good view of what's going on here, and you can adjust it to the number of days back that you're looking or a specific time range. And we've used this in quite a few scenarios to help with the support process. One super simple uh, dashboard here that we produced was for our subpoena process. So when police officers are subpoenaed by the district or city attorneys, the police officers needed in court. This is the system that monitors those requests. And if there's any issues with police officers not getting a request, they can come in here very quickly, and the support staff can look and see the exact times of when these files were transferred. Super simple example, but this gets us, and by us I mean the developers, out of the support process, because now our support team can really support this and have the information they need at their fingertips. There's also emails that go out on failure, so they can come right back in here and then escalate as necessary if there's any issues there. Our traffic tickets here, this is a custom dashboard we did for this. So you can see here that our traffic tickets coming through Mule, which are quite a lot. This is one of our heavier traffic APIs. You can see the average response time. So a great example of this being super useful was a few weeks ago, the police system was timing out. We could see here that the the average time to process a request to this ticket service was sometimes over a minute, sometimes over 2 minutes, and that just led us down to being able to triage the issue and effectively resolve it. But you can see now all of our tickets are getting processed successfully. I don't have to go ask anyone, have we had any ticket errors? We just come in here and we can see all the tickets coming through successfully. They're all color coded. So this is great. Another area we've been diving into is alerting around stability and being proactive around monitoring. So we have API level alerts that we're configuring. So whenever an error happens multiple times and we get these response codes, our admins will get notified, and then we can work with the vendors. So this is a system API which handles those parking tickets. If this goes down, our admins get notified. They can work with the vendor. We can get an instant call out to the vendor and let them know, hey, your system's down, before our customers even know that. Another area we're monitoring is our on-prem runtimes. As I said, we've deployed quite a bit on-prem because our cloud infrastructure was taking quite a while to build out. But now we can get some better visibility into our memory usage, our CPU load, our thread counts, and things like that. So our admins can stay ahead of um, Mule runtimes going down, which we've had go down a few times, but now we have the visibility into triage that and proactively troubleshoot ahead of an incident occurring. That's the major walkthrough of our implementation. I guess, were there any other points that I missed on there that we wanted to cover?
Thank you for that, Nate. I think those dashboards, those are something special. It's good to see the dashboards that are actually in production and being used by customers, right? That was good to see, and also the pipeline, the mentions that you had on the CI/CD and how it's helping you build your applications faster. I think it's a very critical
Yep.
component that every customer should have in place. We did have some questions in the Q&A. If that's okay, I can start asking those, and you can choose who wants to answer it. We had some questions from Ronald around the platform. So Ronald, I posted links on some of the MuleSoft documentation where you can look at for those answers. We had a question from Demon. How are reuse and savings KPIs calculated in your org? So I think you touched on it, Nate, how reuse is calculated. But if you can deep dive
Yep.
into it a little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, the calculation is pretty simple. You can calculate the average time it takes to build an API from start to finish, and then calculate the cost there, and then multiply it by the percent of reuse, because really you're subtracting a lot of that work and just adding operations to an existing API. So really looking at that difference between just adding an operation versus standing up a new API.
Great. Hopefully that answers the question, Demon. Uh, so we had one more question. I know you have a hybrid deployment model where you have some APIs in on-prem and cloud. So we had a question
Mhm.
around only 15 cores for 98 APIs, right? So uh, assuming the answer is it's hybrid, so that's why it's divided. But do you have an idea on how many APIs are in cloud versus on-prem?
Right now, it's maybe about 10%. So that's on the roadmap to really increase that. And we have, like I was saying, we have two very large releases over the next 2 months. So once we have time to focus, we can really convert those APIs, put them up on the cloud, and then work with our calling systems to update their URLs. So yeah, we're really looking forward to that. I see a question around sizing.
Hmm.
Um, this is really dependent upon how much code is um, in a process API. So if we know there's a large amount of processing, a lot of calls out to various APIs will increase the core count initially. But we do a best guess, and then as we view the usage and look at the performance, then we can adjust the workers almost in real time. Our admins can go in there and then adjust the workers on the cloud. So that's one of the big advantages of the cloud. A lot of times our APIs are called, maybe 100 times a day, fairly low usage, and we would just allocate, you know, maybe zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.5 cores. I believe those are options. So pretty low, not even a full core. Just see how it performs, and a lot of times that's enough. So.
Does that answer your question, Manik? Any more follow-up questions?
No, that's good. I think the other follow-up question would be, so you have this sizing in there, you do decide for the cloud or on-prem, but is there anything that you do for performance testing or the stress testing before you go live into production, just to understand how it will behave if you
Yeah,
are
we
using
have
the scripts?
Yep, we have some automated load testing tools. We're using a Pika. We'll simulate the user load using that tool and then monitor the APIs appropriately for sizing. Um, since we haven't deployed too much to the cloud, we haven't done a lot of sizing, with regards to load testing, because most of the APIs we've deployed up to the cloud are more easy wins, where they're lower usage. um, there's not a ton of traffic going through those, but I do recommend starting out with some easy wins just to get the full process done from start to end of deploying something up to the cloud, so you're not um, having to rely on a lot of performance testing, a lot of these advanced tests that you would need to do. Just start with something easy, get it up there, make sure the full process works, and then start ramping up on complexity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm more interested towards the process that you had in adopting the platform, right? What all activities or like initiatives that your team took to kind of evangelize the platform across different teams, just make them understand how the platform works. I mean, it's good to see that you're participating in the community events. What did you do apart from that? How do you motivate developers to build on MuleSoft platform?
A lot of demos. I believe that a best way to engage other folks is to show them what you're doing, what the capabilities are. Um, I found that having that visual and walking people through really sparks their interest, and then they have a lot more questions. So if you stick to slides and things like that, you know, you're probably not going to get as many questions as if you do a live demo and really get the gears going in people's heads about, well, how can we use this? How is this valuable down the road? It's being used in this case, but having those metrics and dashboards, I think, really involves some of those other teams, like our support folks. They had no idea how to support Oracle, and I don't blame them, because even if I was on the support team, I wouldn't know it either. It was so complex, and there's so many strange ways to get at the dashboards and things like that within Oracle. With Mule, we can do that very customized view for them, walk the support folks through, and usually within 5 minutes they understand what's going on with your integration, and they have what they need to support it. So um, yeah, it's been great for us getting our supportability in line with what we would expect as far as distributing the support load across the appropriate teams.
Yeah, and then just to add, I mean, also just having some quick wins. One of the big ones when at the height of the COVID pandemic, when we were trying to set up testing sites and transfer that data over to the vendor, we were able to set that up very, very quickly, which would have taken months. And how long did it take, Nate? On your piece was like a week.
Yeah, the development was a week, and then we deployed within 2 after some rounds of testing. Yeah, so very quick to get in and do the APIs as needed. And during the pandemic, everyone was in a frenzy trying to get COVID testing up and running, and so that was really great to see that we could use this rapid application development to get it up, stand it up, get it tested and deployed.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's a great
Wow.
story, and good to know that you were able to achieve that project. Yeah, objectives. Uh, I saw that you shared the Exchange portal, right, Knight, and I saw a lot of good documentation that you had for some of the APIs. Do you have any API taxonomy that you have implemented to kind of promote reusability? Any tagging, categorization you have done for the assets?
Yeah, we're tagging based on business case or basically data, the domain of the data, so that we can get in there and that'll help the search results surface the APIs that folks are looking for. So yeah, any effort you can put into tagging obviously helps those search results and then helps drive that reuse. So that's super easy and really easy to maintain as well.
Awesome. And if you were to choose your top three priorities, after being working on the platform for so long, what would they be for this year on the platform side?
Yeah, well, I can tell you the first two. One is getting off of Solo completely. I mean, that is our number one priority, and second biggest priority is moving as many APIs to the cloud, getting use of all of our cores. And what would be the third one?
And that,
Third,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
say reliability. We had some gaps on the Oracle side. We had queuing, we had a lot of these enterprise integration patterns, but we still had to reach out to the agencies to repush records quite often. And one of their big priorities was to have our integration platform basically self-heal. So if there's issues within the integrations, those transactions are queued up and we can replay them. We don't have to go back to our customers and say, hey, repush these tickets from this day. That that just interrupts their daily processes. They have enough to do at the police to with all their arrests and the tickets they're pushing through. They don't need to be going back and repushing records if there's some sort of system failure. So we've been really focused on using queuing, leveraging all the integration patterns that are available to us within Mule. Basically, any integration pattern, any enterprise integration pattern you want to implement on Mule, you can implement it. It supports it. I mean, that was one of the big reasons we selected Mule because we were doing some advanced type of integration patterns within Oracle, and we just wanted to move that over. We didn't want to have to re-engineer everything. Now, that said, Mule allows us to do the reliability in a much more efficient manner. We did take a fresh look and standardize that. So we have a really good pattern around, well, how do we handle failures? How do we retry? When do we stop retrying? Um, how do we involve the admins so that the admins can repush records through when when there is an issue? So yeah, the support moves to the admins where it should be and to our support staff. And that just was not the case on Oracle. So yeah, our big priority there is reliability. Looks like we have a question on which version. So within our safety business group, we're using 4.3. We started on our Gov um, business group, which is all the rest of the APIs that are not safety related, and that's on 4.2. So we plan on once we've deployed out safety to then upgrade to 4.3, maybe 4.4. And yeah, we right now we're really focused on getting these releases out, and then we're going to go back to platform stability and any sort of technical debt that's built up over time.
That's true. I have one question about something I think Robert mentioned. You used Catalan for testing, right?
Yep.
So, is it possible to elaborate a little bit on that? And like, how was that used? Was it part the testing was more in the API testing part of the CI/CD, or it was just like an doing the manual testing? How was that in your whole this development cycle?
Yeah, so what the process there was, developers would stand up the initial Catalan project because there's some scripting involved to get that stood up so that we can hand that off to QA. So uh, this isn't automated yet, but we could automate it. I mean, once you have a project defined, you can use some command line tools to execute those tests. But right now, we're relying on our QA staff to then run automated tests and then plug in the data. So you can think of it kind of like an Excel sheet within Catalan. They can plug in additional test records to send those through our integration layer without having to then go into the apps and then push things manually. So uh, really that reduces time. And we're still working on our QA processes as far as getting the QA staff up to that level of, just going out, querying data, plugging it into those spreadsheets, and then running it and seeing the results. But yeah, we're maturing in that process, and yeah, I'm looking forward to automating that down the road.
Oh, that's interesting.
Great.
It's a learning process, and it always keeps evolving.
What was that?
And I was like, yeah, that's a great progress because it's gonna keep evolving until it reaches to probably a good mature level in there.
Yeah,
That's
we're a
good
big
to see.
proponent of doing something really well manually and then automating it. So
Yeah.
you really kind of hone the process down to something that you truly believe you can automate, and then you do it, and then you get those all the advantages of automation, basically, as long as it's the solutions in place. So
That's
That's
great.
nice.
We have one more question from Asif. Were the API policies being automated or being configured manually by the developers?
right now we're configuring those manually through the admins. So the admins have a standard set of policies that they apply. Um, I think there's going to be we're going to be looking at some of the automation features. I know those are available now. Yeah, because that's something that we don't really want to leave up to mistakes, right? Those policies are securing our APIs, so we need to automate that. So that's another roadmap item for us to really look at the automation and do some scanning of our APIs as far as what policies are applied and where are the gaps, just so we have some better governance there.
That's great. Does that answer your question, Asif? Hopefully it does. Uh, yeah, so for everyone else, please post your questions for Nate and Robert. I have one last question from my side. So the industry you are in, like you're a government agency, did you have any constraints in adopting Cloud Hub? And if yes, how did you overcome like the data residency concerns or like the data flowing through the cloud? Did you have any challenges? If you can share something.
Yeah, we had lots of challenges, but I mean, a lot of that was not the technology; it was understanding kind of the shift in technology from on-prem to cloud. So, like I said, in hindsight, would have spent a lot more time in educating because all the concerns, as they kind of mentioned when they did like the penetration testing, was found that there was no concern. So it was all just a belief that there was going to be an issue rather than there really was one. So that was a big pain point, and I solved it with a hammer. Unfortunately, that was the only way to knock down this particular barrier. But I think, like I said, in hindsight, would have tried for a little bit of a better, more cohesive partnership, and that could have been solved way ahead of getting the platform. Because the problem was this issues came up right when we got the platform. We should have solved this beforehand.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one area we're doing some data masking within our flows. We have a custom library we built so that um, as data is flowing across, we can tokenize that data, any sort of sensitive CGIS data, so it doesn't end up in logs. So anything logged ends up on the endpoint platform, so you don't want any of that sensitive data showing up there, and so we have the ability to mask it as that's coming through any of our APIs that we develop.
Great. Yeah. Robert, yeah, good insights on the penetration testing. I think that's what something I'll challenge the customers if they say we have challenges in adopting cloud. But yeah, great to know that we're overcame them. And Nate, the custom library, I think a lot of customers have started implementing custom libraries and also using some external tools to mask the payloads. So that's good to know as well.
Yep. Yeah, there is a tokenization service, but it requires to be on the runtime fabric. We're not quite there yet on our on-prem instance, so that's another roadmap item we could leverage, the tokenization.
Great. Yep. I don't see any new. Manik, anything from your side before we close
No,
out?
I think I'm good there. Thanks. A lot of
Awesome.
new things I got to see today. So I'm definitely gonna go and explore the catalog, Nate. That I never looked at that, but sounded interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
thanks.
I'm going to use a custom dashboard example to see something that is live in action. A lot of times customers ask questions on how we use that. I think we saw a good example today.
Yeah,
Again, I just want to thank you, Robert and Nate, for taking the time and explaining all your journey and talking about some of the challenges that you had. I had I learned a lot from this session, and thanks for sharing all the insights. We would love to have you back again sometime in the future. And again, thanks for taking time today.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone, for
thanks
joining
everyone.
online. This session recording will be posted on the Virtual Muley channel. Take care and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.